1993. My mom was murdered in Yakima, Washington, in front of my little brother and sister. They were 7 and 9 years of age. Her boyfriend had stabbed her in front of them. My little 7-year-old brother's trying to fight this guy off as he's stabbing my mom with a good-sized knife. He turned himself in. 2 days later, I found out that he hid in a car that he had crawled into for a day and a half. A few weeks later, he's in court, and we're at the trial. I was a newer Christian, probably a year and a half into my relationship with God. I was 19 years of age. He's on the court stand, and he looks at me from 14 feet away and says, "Brian, I know you're a Christian. I've recently become a Christian and asked God to forgive me, and I want to know if you would forgive me." Wow. And at that moment, Pastor Vlad, I had the decision to make that was a very, very heavy decision for a 19-year-old kid. I chose to forgive him, number one, because God forgave me, but number two, I wanted my family to be able to see the real Jesus. You just forgive by faith. For me, that day, 1,000,000 pounds lifted off of my shoulders.
Brian grew up in Yakima with a childhood marked by instability, violence, and pain, but also early seeds of faith were planted by a Sunday school bus and tender-hearted grandpa. At 19, after walking out of a party, empty and desperate, he prayed, and God instantly delivered him from alcohol. Only months later, Brian would be shattered when his mother was murdered. In the moment that stunned a courtroom, he chose to forgive her killer by faith. Years into ministry and marriage, Brian also hit another wall. Crippling depression, suicidal thoughts, yet Jesus met him again, but this time it was differently, through counseling, deliverance, and community. And today you're going to hear about this man that I have known personally for many years, who walks with the Lord, who has a thriving ministry, incredible family, and who has an incredible testimony that will mark your life. Brian, welcome.
Thank you so much, Pastor Vlad. What an honor and a privilege to be able to be here at this table with you. I love you dearly. I think very highly of you and your family and your church, and we've learned a lot from you. And I'm personally grateful for you and just this opportunity, because you're someone I really look up to, even though you're a younger man than me, much younger. But I love you very much, and shorter. Look up to you very much, and I super appreciate you, man. And you mean a lot to us.
Thank you for very kind words.
Thank you for having us.
So, Pastor, we just recently saw the memorial service for Charlie Kirk, where his wife got up and forgave that man. Following that, Tim Allen forgave his father's killer, who he seems to have struggled to forgive him. And your story also resonates with that. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to your mom and how did you forgive in that courtroom?
Yeah, in 1994, it was 1993. My mom was murdered in Yakima, Washington, in front of my little brother and sister. They were 7 and 9 years of age, murdered from her boyfriend. Her boyfriend had stabbed her in front of them, and they were fighting him off and trying to fend him off, and my little sister had ran out of the house. And he had chased her out of the house, this individual did, and my little 7-year-old brother's trying to fight this guy off as he's, stabbing my mom with a good-sized knife. Can not even imagine that taking place. This individual stabbed my mom one time earlier, an inch away from her heart, about 30 days before he killed her. And after he did that, he spent 30 days in the Yakima County Jail. And so from the jail, he would write my mom letters and say that if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you, and basically I'm going to take your life. So he spent 30 days in jail, gets out of jail, no job, from another country, and literally comes back and works his way back into her life. And she was really a battered woman, and addicted to drugs, worked his way back into her life and ended up taking her life. And, the individual that did this, he took her life, and when he was in jail, he told her he was going to do it, and it was a shock to our entire community, mm-hmm. our family, devastating to our family. Also with him taking her life, he told her that he was going to do this, and that was what was so devastating, because we had moved my mom in the process a few miles down the road. And when he came back and worked his way back into her life, we thought that maybe she was going to be able to get away from him, which she wasn't. And so this individual, when he did that, I mean, it really devastated our lives. So he turned himself in. 2 days later, I found out that he hid in a car that he had crawled into for a day and a half. And was avoiding the police, finally turned himself in. And then, a few weeks later, he's in court, and we're, at the trial. I was a newer Christian, probably a year and a half into my relationship with God. I was 19 years of age, and really 3 months after I graduated from high school, a newer Christian. He's on the court stand, and he looks at me from 14 feet away and says, "Brian, I know you're a Christian. I've recently become a Christian and asked God to forgive me, and I want to know if you would forgive me." Wow. And at that moment, Pastor Vlad, I had the decision to make that was a very, very heavy decision for a 19-year-old kid to look into this man's eyes and genuinely say, "Yeah, I forgive you," which I did forgive him by faith. I didn't know how to process that, but I was 19, just graduated from high school, new to my faith in Christ, but I chose to forgive him, number one, because God forgave me, but number two, I wanted my family that was full, the courtroom was full of my family. I wanted my family to be able to see the real Jesus. I think people need to see Jesus, not just hear about Jesus, and I knew that would be a moment that people would see. Of course, in the courtroom, when I said, "Yeah, I forgive you," there was a gasp in the courtroom and tears, and not only from others, but also from myself. But kind of a lot like Erica Kirk, as I watched her forgive her husband's killer just a few weeks ago, so much flashed back in my mind and in my heart. So it was something that I chose to forgive by faith. Early on, that's something that I learned from my mother-in-law is you just forgive by faith. Even if you can't understand that how forgiveness is totally going to work, it's important to be able to vocalize it and get it out in the air. But for me, that day, 1,000,000 pounds lifted off of my shoulders, and I'm grateful that I did.
Did you have to continuously forgive him? Was there a point where you already no longer felt it? Because 19 years old, you're brand new to Christian faith. Now, this does help a little bit when a person has given their life to Christ.
Yeah.
It doesn't ease the pain, and forgiveness doesn't minimize the crime and the harm and the pain that he has caused to your family and to you. But a lot of times people say that forgiveness is this one-time event. Other people say that it's something that you just make one time, but afterwards, sometimes you'll have to keep going back to the decision because the feelings would come. I mean, that courtroom definitely was public.
Yeah.
It was emotional. A lot of emotions are there. What about the next day?
Yeah.
The day after that? Did you have to wrestle with that?
Oh, for sure. I wrestled with it off and on for, quite a while. There were, moments and seasons where I would genuinely feel like, yeah, I forgave this individual, but then there were moments of anger and rage where I felt like, no, I don't forgive this individual. So that back and forth battle for sure is something that you wrestle with in regards to forgiveness, especially with something to this degree and that magnitude. One thing I do want to say is that 30-something years later, about 2 years ago, on the very first night that we were doing our tent revival that you preached at, which was a Wednesday night in Yakima, I had just written my book, Overcoming Giants in Our Lives, which was all about this story. 2 months after the book came out, first night of the tent revival, I pull into the city hall in Union Gap. I'm taking blueprints into the city because we're building a church, taking blueprints into the city. A car pulls into the parking lot. I pull into the parking lot. The guy gets out, I get out. The guy that I'm talking about, he kind of hesitated, and he knew that I seemed familiar, and he seemed familiar to me. And we're walking in front of each other. He's walking in front of me. I'm 10 feet behind him, and I'm thinking to myself, who is this individual? And it dawned on me, this is the individual that killed my mom. 30 years later, I'm 10 feet apart from this individual, and literally, this is in the public setting after he had done 20 years in prison. First time I've ever seen the individual. I could tell it was him. I never forget a face. I knew it was him. He's just a little bit older, probably in his early 60s. And again, those feelings came back big time. So he goes to the counter. I go to the restroom. In the restroom, I'm going through in my mind what I want to have a conversation with this guy. And so I'm thinking I'm going to go up to him and I'm going to ask, "Are you so-and-so?" And when I got out of the restroom, he was gone. He beat feet. He probably remembered from the first time that we had an encounter when he stabbed my mom the first time, because I was a pretty vicious young man. Used to fight a lot and drink a lot. Had a lot of pain growing up, but this was an individual. When he did stab my mom the first time, I had chased him out of one of her bedroom windows. Because I had decided to try to lay hands on him, if you know what I mean. Not pray for him, but fight him, beat him up. So he probably had that in his mind. Like the last time we encountered each other wasn't good. So anyway, yeah. That was an experience altogether in and of itself. 30-something years later.
You ever tried to follow up to kind of see where he's at, if he's Christian still, walking with the Lord? Or
I would have loved to have done that day. I have said for years, this individual, I've forgiven now this individual to the point that he could be in the church that I pastor, worshiping on the front row next to me, and I genuinely would not want to hurt the individual, just because God has done such a deep work in my heart, and so so much healing in my life as a result of that. So I would love to have that conversation with him, just to let him know, yeah, absolutely, I genuinely forgive you. But that'd be something pretty wild. But it was to me, that day was pretty wild when I was thinking, this individual lives in the city that I pastor a church in, and the city's only 8,000 people. And so I'm sure that I'll probably run into him again.
If we go back to a little bit earlier, before this incident where you had to forgive and you forgave and you walked in that forgiveness, how was your life like growing up? You mentioned a little bit about your mom's drug abuse, and you've struggled with alcohol. And I remember hearing your testimony, how you encountered Christ. But before we talk about how Christ encountered you in that hotel room, how was your life like growing up?
Yeah, I was raised by lots of siblings. My mom, off and on throughout my life. My grandparents, off and on throughout my life. And I was getting in a lot of trouble. Born and raised on the east side of Yakima. No dad in my life. I didn't meet the individual that my mom said was my dad until I was 38 years of age. I had a conversation with him for a couple hours and have not seen him since, and that was like 15 years ago. So I don't have a relationship with my dad, but I had a lot of uncles that were like dads to me, so that played a father role and figure in my life. At the age of, I was from about 6th grade to 12th grade, my aunt and uncle took me in and just showed me a better way of life. They were not really believers in Jesus, followers of Christ, but they took me in and just really gave me some stability because I didn't have stability. I was bounced from family member to family member, sleeping on couches, and just a lot of instability in my life growing up. In and out of a lot of trouble, breaking into cars and homes, and catching things on fire, just crazy stuff that little kids should never ever get involved in. But being that I didn't have a good upbringing, a good support system, I had family members that loved me dearly, but just with where we were at, I was just constantly getting in trouble. And had I not had an aunt and uncle take me in and raise me, I graduated from high school, which I never thought would happen. I would never have had that, if they hadn't have taken me in and shown me a better way of life, and just to really grow up and want to have, the American dream, have a good life, But I'd have never had that had it not been for them. I probably would have ended up in prison because I was getting into a lot of trouble as a young man.
What were some of the things that you were getting into prior to you encountering Christ?
Growing up, like I said, on the east side of Yakima, I remember there were things that, were things that we did and a lot of stealing, a lot of breaking into things and places, and just things that I saw uncles do. I was raised by my grandparents at that time, and they were elderly, but all of their sons, they were in and out of trouble. But I was always watching them do certain things, and kids learn from what they see, you know. And so I was just taking it in, and I was literally copying what I saw happen. And I had uncles even tell me when I was a young age, probably 12, 13 years of age, this kid's going to end up in prison. And by the grace of God, he saved me at a later date and age, and I did end up in prison, but not because I was an inmate, because I was working for prison as a corrections officer. I did that for about 7 years for the state of Washington, and so I ended up in prison. But
talk about that
as a
night
guard.
when you experienced freedom from alcoholism and encounter with Christ.
Yeah, me and you, we've talked about that a little bit, but I was at a party in high school. A lot of high schoolers party, and I was without Christ, didn't have really a relationship with Christ. I had gone to church a couple times with my girlfriend, who's my wife now of 31 years. Gone to church a couple times, had prayed the prayer to receive Christ, but didn't have the strength to really live it out because I didn't surround myself with the right people. I did have a decent support system through her parents and her, but I really helped lead her down the wrong road, and she was raised in church. And so, one night in high school, we were at a party, and like we did on weekends, everybody's drinking, partying, and we're at this party, and at this party, I'm in the living room, and I'm watching everybody, all my friends, everybody's, just drinking, and on the inside, I had this feeling like this is so empty. And I felt like, man, this is a snapshot of what my life is going to be like, which I did not want my life to go down that road because I saw the devastation that it caused from my mom, my aunts, uncles. And so I felt like this voice on the inside say, you need to leave. You need to go home. And so I just got up and I walked out of the party, and I walked home, which was, just a few blocks down the road. I walked home, and as I approached my house, went to the bedroom, and my bedroom was kind of like a living room and everything, couch, and I drank that night pretty heavy, and so when you drink to a certain point, you're buzzing pretty good, and so I'm in the living room, and the room is spinning, and I'm like, man, I need to go to sleep, but at the same time, I'm watching Christian television. It was a Benny Hinn Miracle Crusade. I'm watching Christian television, and I got on my knees, and I prayed, and I said, God, please take this alcohol from me. And the room is spinning. And 5 minutes later, the television preacher says, right now, there's a young man sitting in his room, and the power of the Holy Spirit is coming over you, and you're being delivered from alcohol, and you'll never touch it again. And I knew that I had prayed that prayer 5 minutes before. And it was only a prayer that I and God knew about. No one else was in that room. I prayed that prayer. When this preacher said that, I wasn't raised in church, but I knew that was for me. And as he said that, I literally felt like electricity from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. And instantly the room stopped spinning. And instantly I was sober, as if I had never drank. I felt like I put my hand in a light socket, like physically.
Wow.
And I knew something supernatural happened. I didn't know God well. I believed in God, believed in Jesus, in the Jesus that I had heard from, a few times in Sunday school. Did not know God well at all. I was a very, very new Christian, just a few months into my relationship with God. And when that happened, I knew God was real. God revealed his power to me, instantly sobered me up. I called my girlfriend at the time, and I said, this is what just happened. I've just been delivered of alcohol. And I was drunk, and now I'm sober. And I want to go to church with you. That was a Saturday night around 11:30. I want to go to church with you tomorrow. And she's crying. And she's like, no way, are you kidding me? So happy, ecstatic, because little did I know that her and her mom, they were praying, God, if he's the one for her, you got to show us. If he's not the one, God, you got to remove him from her life. And
Come on.
I always joke with the church that I pastor that, her mom was like, God, if, he's the one, you got to save him. If he's not the one, you got to kill him, but they always get a kick out of that. But she didn't pray that prayer. But I'm sure that as Christian parents, they didn't want their daughter being with some, young, brawling, alcoholic kid that is in and out of trouble. So it was a powerful experience. It changed my life forever. It was over 30 years ago. I knew that God was real from that moment on, and I knew that God had a plan for my life.
Have you struggled with alcohol after that?
Absolutely not. He delivered me, set me free. I have not touched it since then. Set me free by the power of the Holy Spirit. It was a supernatural encounter where I knew that I knew that I knew that God was real. So I've not struggled with it at all.
What do you tell to those people who, advocate? And I know this is completely off the topic, but people who, what are your thoughts on alcohol? Now you've experienced growing up that. Now you've been set free, and like myself and a lot of pastors, mutual friends that we have, really advocate for spirit-filled life, but sober life.
Yeah, absolutely. My thought is because I was an alcoholic, I was not raised in church, I know the damage that it did. I was in and out of a lot of trouble, and it led me down the wrong path. And as a pastor, I tell people in my church, nothing good ever comes from alcohol. And so I steer clear from it myself. I don't drink at all. I don't drink wine. I don't drink anything. I used to drink a lot and love to drink, but it got me in a lot of trouble. And if I still was in that, I wouldn't have a family. I wouldn't have daughters. I wouldn't have a wife that loves me. I wouldn't have a church.
You wouldn't be married for over 30 years.
I wouldn't be married. No, my wife, she kind of gave me the ultimatum. She said, listen, boy, if we're going to be together, this has got to go. And so I'm sure that helped also in the deliverance process, because I wanted her more than the Budweiser. I wanted her more than all of that. So, I absolutely encourage people to stay away from it, and so I don't think anything good comes from it.
Yeah. How did your journey into ministry? Because you're not coming from a pastor's home. You're coming from a broken home, and how Christ redeemed, restored, and the life you live today, the example that you give not only to the community but to other people. Nobody would have ever thought that this is what you came from. It just shows the power of Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit's work. Where did the ministry begin? How did you got into ministry?
Yeah. So my wife was a pastor's kid and raised in a pastor's home, and they started the church that I now pastor and have pastored for the last 18 years. And so at the age of, 1993, my mom died. In about 94, we were married. We've been married 31 years. A year and a half into marriage, we were in a tent revival in Colusa, California, and I was called into ministry in that. A prophetic word came from a preacher. And he called me out of the crowd of probably 2,000 people and said, son, the hand of God is on your life. You're going to preach the gospel. And I was standing up, and I was 25 feet away from this man, not raised in church. The next thing I know, I'm on my back. And the power of God that I know now, it literally knocked me over. You read that place in the Bible where Jesus just spoke a word and they fell over.
He didn't touch you.
Yeah, he did not touch me. There were no ushers behind me to catch me when I fell. It was concrete floors, and it's like I fell into literally a sea of clouds. And as I was down on the ground, something supernatural happened, and I knew that I had an encounter with God once again as a new Christian, where God was showing me how real He was, and so I got up from that place, and of course, we drive back home, and within a matter of 2 weeks, we had started a youth ministry in Yakima, Washington. Our church was in the inner city. We had a boxing gym and a school in the back, and we would bring in gang members from the streets and teach them how to get their driver's license and GEDs and diplomas. And so we started an inner city ministry. We'd have 150 youth showing up on Wednesday nights and preaching to them, and right in the hood of Yakima, man. And so that was my experience with ministry. Just get in and make it happen. Get in and create events and do my very best to try to teach and preach the Bible, which I barely knew at all. but I had a heart for God because I encountered God, and He was real to me, and He changed my life. And so that's how it happened for me. You know, I tried to go to Bible college, but God He never opened the door for me to go to Bible college. And so I was like, well, the best way for me to learn is just on-the-job training, school of hard knocks, you know. So I'm going to get in and serve, scrub toilets and do whatever. You know, it took in ministry to begin, you know, and we were youth pastors for like 12 years. So, you know,
How did you just transition into being lead pastors when they were transitioning out, or was there some wrestling?
Absolute wrestling, because I was in youth ministry for 12 years. And
did you want to be a senior pastor?
No, I did not want to be a senior pastor because I knew what my mom and dad went through. My in-laws went through, and I was like, man, I don't want to pastor adults. I don't want to. And so the time came for her. Her dad had gotten sick, so time came for me to kind of step in. And so I did unwillingly step in for about a year, but I did not want to be a senior pastor. And so an opportunity came for me to be a youth pastor in the Seattle area. And so we started leaning into that really, really heavy. And we were like, okay, God, this is our chance to get out of Yakima. And I wanted out of Yakima because of the pain that Yakima had brought to my life.
Yeah.
And so, we went to the Seattle area, and it was about 18 months to 2 years that we were there. And then we began to pray, God. We began to feel the release of the Holy Spirit, saying that I'm releasing you. We didn't know where He was releasing us to. We were praying, God, release us to Tri-Cities, release us to California, Texas, anywhere but Yakima, and because of the pain that Yakima that I had from Yakima. So I didn't want to come back to Yakima. And so being in the Seattle area, I say now that was kind of like the Wells Belly experience for me to gain God's perspective. And God always has a place where He can get your heart to surrender so that He can get your attention. And I always say that God's not going to make you do anything that you don't want to do. He'll just make you wish you did. And so
that's good.
It's so true, man.
It's
in
so
my
true.
life, I ran from the will of God. I ran. I was a Jonah, man, running to the Seattle area because I didn't want to be a senior pastor.
Even as a youth pastor.
As
so
a
crazy
youth
that
pastor,
I ran from the will of God.
I was running from the will of God, and so I think back now, I think that was like God's permissive will. He's like, all right, I'm going to let you do what you want to do.
So were you just miserable during those 18 months, or was God withdrawing His grace? I mean, how did it feel? Or you just simply knew that you were not in the center of His will?
I knew that I was not in the center of His will. In fact, before we left, Pastor, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit this now, but before we left, one morning I'd gotten off work graveyard, and it's like an audible voice of God. I don't think I've ever heard this. But it was like an audible voice of God that I heard, where literally I turned around in my hallway to see if somebody was behind me. And I felt that audible voice say to me, pastor the flock that is among you. And because of the pain in my heart, I did not want to, I didn't want to obey that voice. And so I went to Seattle. I fled to, like Jonah, to Tarshish. I fled. And because God is not going to make you do anything you don't want to do, He'll make you wish you did. He ended up bringing us back to Yakima.
How did that happen?
Yeah, my wife, we were praying. We felt the release. We were on vacation in California by Mount Shasta. We had stopped by Mount Shasta Lake, and we were just out talking on the side of the car. And we both had this realization, and that we knew we needed to come back to Yakima. God began to speak to us out of the book of Nehemiah about going back to the city that we were really called to, and help rebuild the walls of that city, and link arms with other pastors. And so we did that very thing.
Are you glad you did it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. At the same time, I wonder God's graced the ministry in tremendous ways, but at the same time, I think, man, what might it have been had I obeyed Him the first time? I don't know, you never know, but thank God that the word of the Lord came to Brian a second time, and a third and a fourth and a fifth, thank God for His grace and mercy,
And you're not like Jonah
Absolutely.
sitting over there upset, hoping that Yakima will burn.
Yeah,
You're like
yeah.
Nehemiah. You're rebuilding the walls.
For sure,
And
yeah.
God is doing such an amazing thing. The church that you're pastoring is so full of life. That whole community is incredible.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So even in your ministry, there was a time though you hit a wall in 2019. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, 2019, everybody has and remembers COVID, the lockdowns. And, I had been pastoring for about 14 years at the time. And I think with the lockdowns, at least in Washington State, our governor was kind of like pretty strict, and and everything was shut down because of COVID. We didn't really know what it was, what to really expect, So things were locked down, shut down, and then they began to slowly open back up with church and all of that. But there was a season in that period where things from my past began to surface in my mind, my emotions, and I just began to remember things that happened as a kid, 5, 6, 7 years of age, being molested and raped by individuals, adults, and things that I always kind of pushed to the back and would do my very best, try very hard to not really open up about it. My wife knew about it, but not to the point and to the degree that I would tell her about it at that time, but I had a lot of pain. And that's why I drank alcohol for so many years, from up until the age of 19. I would cover and mask that pain with alcohol. And I think that's just one of the things that a lot of people end up doing, So, when that happened, it was very...
Was it just that lockdown that caused that?
I think
That
so.
thing you were hiding for so long, because you were in ministry now for a very long time.
Yeah, in ministry for a very long time. At the same time, during that same season, I remember reading about different pastors that were taking their life one after another after another. The church that I was pastoring, we were doing drive-in church. We had 600 people showing up in their cars on a Sunday morning listening to the radio while I would preach. And so it was an intense season. There were a lot of people that were incredible in like depression, because of losing their jobs or not being able to go back to work, and so it was a wild season. And so for me, all of these different emotions and feelings began to surface that I never dealt with. I never had counseling one time in my life up until a few years after that. Which was really about 2021, 2022 is when the first time that I really went away to get counseling. But these feelings came back like full force, and they were like haunting me to the degree and to the point where I became suicidal. I remember sitting in my house in a dark basement at night after everybody fell asleep and just contemplating, should I take my life? Could I take my life? How could I take my life? Because I was listening to the devil. And so many people are in that place. As a pastor, I would preach to the people that I pastor, if you're not talking to yourself, you're crazy. During this season, I wasn't talking to myself. I wasn't encouraging myself. I was cut off from being in church on Sundays in person. I was cut off from a lot of relationships. I don't have a lot of relationships, even with other pastors in my own city. I have more friends with, I'm friends with, more pastors in Tri-Cities than I am even in Yakima, which is sad, But I think pastors need friends, and that's why I'm super grateful for you. And you've played a really good role for me in my life and helped bring, a lot of healing and freedom to my own life. So that was a dark season.
How did you come out of that season?
So my wife had been praying when I told her. We came out of lunch one Sunday after a Sun. We came out of lunch on a Sunday after church, and my mother-in-law had a dream, and this dream that she had, it was like a Nathan to David dream, and it was prophetic. And she told me the dream that she had, and I knew it was from God. And I knew that that day I had to tell my wife. On the way home, I broke down. I'm bawling like a baby. I tell my wife, this is what's going on. And I said, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know how to get help. I had kept it in the dark, and I've learned, man, that whatever you keep in the dark, the enemy has access to. And that day I got it into the light. I told my wife about it. So she's praying, God, how can I get him help? It's challenging as a pastor to find help in the city that you pastor because just confidentiality reasons and stuff. And so my wife wanted to get me help, and she ran into a friend of hers that had lost a son of theirs to, losing his life in a tragic way. She ran into her friend. Her friend and our friend is just glowing. And she's like, how are you doing? What's going on? You are glowing. And this is just several months after, that had happened in their life. They're good friends of ours. She begins to tell my wife how what happened and how she got help. She went to this place in Tennessee called Onsite, and my wife began to look into it immediately, and she began to try to make plans for me to go there. And this was around February or so, because I had never had counseling up to that point. I had always just stuffed things under the rug, pushed it back. No, I'm okay. I'm a man. I can do this. She said, no, you need to go. And I'm stubborn. And I was like, I'm not going. I'll go next year. I can make it through this. The church that I pastor had then opened back up. We opened back up, and we're back in attendance on Sunday mornings. One service. Didn't know what we were coming back to. The church is watching me walk through this process of brokenness on Sunday mornings because it would come out in my preaching. They didn't know the degree to which it was. I agreed to go. I think it was in May or June. I agreed to go to Tennessee. Got on a plane, went all the way to Tennessee for about 6 days. I was like, okay, if I'm going to go, I want it to be as short as possible. Arrive at this place. Never been to Tennessee in my life. Arrive, get a rental car and catch a shuttle bus to this place. Felt like I was turning myself into a prison sentence. But anyway, you arrive, the intake, happens. You turn your cell phone in. There's a blackout period. Felt like I felt like an inmate definitely going to, get help. So there, I didn't know how bad I needed it. But really, through the process of about 6 days, I learned afterwards they take you through about 9 months of therapy, and it was intense therapy because you have to deal with you. You have to deal with why you're there. You have to get honest, and you have to get open. I've learned that you're only as healthy as you are honest. And so there, the counselor that I had, and she was a Christian, even though this was not a Christian organization. There are thousands and thousands of people that go there and get help. A lot of celebrities go there. I went for 6 days, and the day that I got my phone back, on the day 6, I called my wife, and I knew that I was a new man. When I heard her voice on the other end of the line, I was so grateful to hear her voice. And I felt like, honestly, for the first time in 30 years of marriage, like I was seeing and hearing my wife for the very first time. Wow. And just the compassion that she had towards me and for me was something that just was beautiful. I talked to her. I was coming home the next morning. I flew into Tri-Cities. By the way, it's an awesome airport. I love it. Wish Yakima had one of these. Flew into Tri-Cities. My daughters picked me up. I have 3 daughters. They picked me up with my wife. on the way home, they said that they were amazed because I couldn't stop talking. And I was always real quiet. Just quiet, introverted up until that point. Not that it's weird how pastors can be that way. You get up and preach sermons on Sunday morning and have, more words to say than a woman, and then...
until you get in a car with your family.
Yeah. So I did that, and they were just absolutely blown away. But I feel like being away in Tennessee, it really healed my soul, helped me understand why, I did some of the things that I did, helped me understand why my mom did the things that she did. One of the main huge things that we dealt with there in Tennessee was rejection. Because between the time that my mom was murdered and the first time that she was stabbed, we moved her. But really close up until the point where it was probably a week before she was murdered, I went to her house, the apartment she lived in. The curtains were open. She was there. And I pull up, and all of a sudden I see the curtains close. I go up, I knock on the door. I'm trying to get her to come to the door. I don't know if she was high on drugs or whatever, but the shame that she was eaten up with would not allow her to see me face to face. I was the oldest kid. I've got 4 brothers, 1 sister, all younger than me, but I'm a defender. And I literally, when she closed the curtains on me, I took that as a rejection. And so at Tennessee, I had to deal with that. That was pretty intense. It just helped me see, that she was a broken woman. My mom had me when she was 16. Crazy, But
how old were you when you went to Tennessee?
I'm 51 now. I know I don't look it, but I'm 51 now. My gray hair is telling me that I do look it. I'm like, dear Jesus, need some Just for Men to help this brother out. But I was 4 years ago, man, already.
Wow.
Yeah. So the last 4 years, coming back to church, coming back to pastoring with my full heart, I feel like I've been healed. I'm in a better place than I've ever been. I do want to say that I owe a lot of that, the majority of it all, to, of course, Jesus and the Lord for really doing a deep work in my heart. But I want to be very honest. I didn't really know what Deliverance ministry was. I mean, I did, because we're pastors of a Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
But, I thought, Deliverance was, casting demons out of people that, were really bad and all this stuff, and didn't really know that, Christians could have demons. Even though one time my wife prayed for me and commanded the devil to leave, and I was, angry at the time, and literally I felt like the devil leave me. I felt like the spirit leave me, and I'm like, I didn't tell my wife about that until years later. I was like, this happened. She's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? I didn't want her to think, man, you're not that anointed, But anyway, she's like, we're arguing back and forth, and I rebuked the devil in Jesus' name. And so I felt like this darkness, boom, like leave me. I literally saw it leave me. And so, there was a time where we were at that time, because of lockdowns and all of this stuff, we began to get introduced to, just deliverance ministry and being set free and healed and all this different stuff. And so my son-in-law was watching a lot of your videos and learning a lot. And they were living at the time in our basement. And my wife would tell him, hey, don't watch those videos. You're going to bring spirits into our house. And
Really?
she was like, don't watch this. I don't even want to open the door to this. We were of that, mindset, demons can get on you and stuff, not really knowing, we were just kind of ignorant in regards to that. My wife begins to watch them. I was like on the outside. I'm like, I don't want to watch this stuff. I want to focus on other stuff. You guys, if you want to watch that, you go for it. I knew you at the time, knew who you were, and we had been friends for a little while. But all of a sudden, they're wanting to, come to your conference, and then all of a sudden, we're bringing our team to your conference and different things. And all of a sudden, we're in the prayer line. And I remember showing up at Hungry Gen and getting yellow badges, and like, and I remember Pastor Lana saying, "Oh, hey, we got a seat right up here for you." And we just show our bands. She's like, "Oh, well, praise the Lord." And so, we just swallowed our pride and got prayer but hey, thank God that we, I think that, again, Scripture says that God's opposed to the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. I'm like, man, if I got something on the inside of me, let's get it out. So I had a lot of junk, man, from, I think everybody has junk in their trunk, man. And so I felt like, man, I got to get this out. I got to get healing, And so I have received a lot of deliverance. I have received a lot of learned how to do personal deliverance even over myself. I didn't know how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
That wasn't my thing, but it's become my thing. And so I'm so grateful for your church and your teaching on just your channels. And I think what you do for the body of Christ it's so imperative, so important, man. So I just want to say thank you for doing what you do and not shying away from it. And the balance that you bring to it all and the scripture that you bring to it all and the teaching, it's you can't argue with that.
But thank you for your testimony and your vulnerability of even the humility that you had to go to a place to receive ministry, to receive that counseling, to open up, and how your heart after that opened up, and those closed curtains now are open.
Yeah.
There's something happening in your soul. Brian, when you pass on to glory, unless it happens before rapture, what do you want to be remembered for?
I think one of my favorite scriptures is Acts 13:22. That David served the purpose of God in his generation, and then he died. I want to be able to say that I served the purpose of God in my generation. I want to make room for others. I want to do big things for the kingdom of God. I want to bring Jesus Christ a return on his investment, which was his life. Salvation is not it's free, but it's not cheap. And so I want to be remembered for my faith. That's what I want to be remembered for.
You mentioned a little bit in passing, you have a book that you wrote. You also recently started a podcast with your wife. If people want to learn more about your ministry, the church, the book, and the podcast, where they can find that information?
So our church is Breakthrough Church in Union Gap, Washington, and we have Sunday services at 9 and 11 o'clock. The book I wrote 2 years ago, and it's called Overcoming Giants in Your Life, and I write all about the story of forgiveness, and I in that book I talk about Goliath, which was my mom's murderer, and then also the fact and the reality that Goliath had brothers, and when 30 something years later, when I saw my mom's murderer for the first time in public, it's like Goliath's brothers were right in front of me, and so I was faced again with the reality: did you really forgive? Yeah, I forgave, and I did slay Goliath the first time, and this was just his ugly brother raising his head one more time. So I had to forgive again, and it's important. And then the YouTube channel podcast that we just recently started, it's just Brian and Carrie Jennings on YouTube. So we're just trying to talk to people about Jesus and struggles in life. And I found that, Pastor, in life, man, more people can relate to your losses than your wins, and just the importance of telling people what you've been through, not your breakthroughs. And so, I've been through a lot, man, and I just want to help people as a pastor, as a son of God. I want to help people get to heaven, man, and that's what my focus is. Okay. And so,
well, Pastor Brian, thank you for your time.
I love you, man.
For your friendship, and thank you for your honesty and humility that you carry, you and your wife, and your whole family, and your church. And for those of you guys watching, links are below, so make sure that you subscribe, get his book, and anytime you're around this area, or Yakima area, you come and pay visit. I believe you will not be disappointed. I mean, we had my professor actually from the Tacoma University came on Sunday. They were there at your church on Saturday for the for the Promise
Promise
Keepers. Yeah, she
Keepers,
came with
wow.
another gentleman and stuff. So yeah, so a lot of people, even when you
so
would do these
cool.
tent revivals,
Yeah.
people would drive 16 to 18 hours, you know,
yeah.
and a lot of them would be like, some of them would be like, Vlad, I wanted to see you. I was like, I'm actually in Tri-Cities. They'll actually come to Yakima
Yeah.
to see me then,
That's
to come
so
to Tri-Cities.
funny. That's so
you do
funny.
have a grace in your life. You do have a grace in your church, and I'm so glad and honored to know you as a friend, and also to see your life and your ministry, the health that you carry, and now sharing. I mean, half of the things you shared today, I didn't even know. The other things I kind of knew, and so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. I believe it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, man. I love you.
Appreciate
Thank you guys for watching.
I hope that this video helped you to grow in your walk with God. Imagine multiplying that impact through the world. Through this ministry, we've discipled over 160,000 students through our online school, created over 60 reading plans that over 2 million people have completed already, and published resources in 18 languages. But our heart is bigger than content. We're feeding orphans, building homes, and partnering with missionaries on the front lines of the gospel. Would you consider becoming a monthly partner? Every dollar helps to reach, teach, and care for more people. Click on the link below to become a part of this movement. Thank you.